want to remind everybody that a recording is being made at the direction of the board. The recording may capture images and sounds of those attending this meeting. And we took no action in closed session. So then I move on to roll call. President Elkishon here, Clerk Reed.
Here.
Trustee Lopez Jones. Here. Trustee Maxfield.
Here.
Trustee Galindo.
Here.
Our student rep is. All right, if everybody can stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is it me or is it one?
Warren here.
Chris, can we-
Okay.
Hold on here. So I'm just curious, do you have any changes to the agenda? No? So I need a motion to go ahead and adjust the next agenda.
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Okay. The district mission statement. We are a collaborative, culturally rich educational community where a rigorous and innovative curriculum prepares our students to be successful contributors to our global society. 4, recognitions. The Board of Education recognizes students and employees or members of our community who have received recognition for academic or athletic achievement or who have made significant contributions to any kind to the district. The following individuals tonight are going to be recognized. Rosa Pichu. Can you come up to the podium? Okay, I want to talk a little bit about Rosa. Rosa Pichu is our outreach specialist at the Up Valley Family Center. And we are honoring her for her dedicated recruiting for both the Parent Institute for Quality Education, or what we call PK, and for our Calistoga AIM High Summer Program. For the past 20 years, Rosa Pichu has been working with students and families throughout Calistoga. She is a trusted community messenger and has dedicated her career to helping others and ensuring that all children in Calistoga have the resources they need to live a healthy and successful life. Most recently, Rosa has contributed countless hours and well over 100 phone calls to recruiting students for our AIM High Summer Program and parents for our Parent Institute for Quality Education. We are so fortunate not only to have the Family Center as a collaborative piece of our community school initiatives, but so lucky to have such amazing people that work there. So, Rosa, this is for you. I don't know if I'm supposed to hug. I'm a hugger, but you know, with the whole virus thing, we'll do a little kiss. Come on over. This is for you for all of our
Thank you, thank you so much for permitting my person working with the whole community. I appreciate you with my heart. Okay? Thank you so much.
public comments, public business from the floor on non-agendized items. So this portion of the agenda allows an individual the opportunity to address the board on any item regarding board business that's not on the agenda. Without taking action or entering into a dialogue with the public, board members may briefly respond to statements made or ask clarifying questions about topics posed by the public. Your matter may be referred to administration, and individual speakers are limited to 3 minutes each. Do we have anybody that wanted to speak? No? Are you sure? Okay, just want to make sure. Then we'll move on to 6 for presentation. 6.1, the California Science Test CAST scores. Michael.
You gotta send it to someone.
Hey, good evening. We recently received the scores for our CAST test, this California Science Test. I'll report out tonight. It's a little cut off there, but I was thinking we should go back and ask when's the last time you took a science test? And that would be 2013. And so with the STAR program, or the CST tests, which you probably remember, that was 1998 to 2013. And we tested English, math, science, history, social science. With the Common Core state standards, California ended the STAR program and started the CAST program. And when they did that, they only brought back an English and a math assessment. So that's all we've been assessing for, right? It's English and math. We've had no science tests, no history, social science tests. So this test that we took last year, received scores for, was the first science standardized test we've taken through the state in 6 years. So what is it? Well, it's based on the next generation science standards, NGSS. Those were adopted in 2013. They're quite a bit different than the previous standards. They introduced engineering, but probably more importantly, they're based on a lot of problem solving, analysis, communication, collaboration, some of the things we see with Common Core, but they're much richer with regard to the skills students are learning, not just the facts students are learning. They're administered in grades 5, 8, and once in high school. For us, that will be 11th grade. They utilize the online TOMS platform. This is the testing platform. And now what the state's done is they've moved ELA, math, for the first time LPAC, and now science. And this is good news. That means there's one platform, one online place students go, teachers go to test. Teachers have become familiar with it, students have. And within that platform, there's tools where students can modify the tests to make it easier for them. All students have universal access tools, and they'll become familiar and probably already have it through math and ELA, and now they can access those for LPAC and science. They're adaptive and interactive. Adaptive meaning as the students do better, the questions get harder, and vice versa, just like English and math tests. Actually, last year's test was not adaptive. The state couldn't produce it in time, but it will ultimately be like English and math adaptive. And it's very interactive. I was going to pull up the test tonight. I'm not going to do that just for the sake of time. If you ever want to look at the test, we can do that. It's really neat. You know, we grew up taking tests with paper. You got a pencil, you bubbled in an answer, right? These new tests, you are creating graphs, dragging and dropping images into graphic organizers, short essay, long response. They're really quite interactive compared to the tests that we do. And they're rigorous. This tests analysis and reasoning versus memorization of facts. That's true. And they cover multiple years of content. So that 5th grade test is covering K-5, 8th grade test is covering 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and high school is covering 20 courses. So we're only testing 3 times on science. That's covering multiple years. It's also covering multiple domains: earth science, earth and space, life and physical. And this actually was a little bit of a challenge for our students this year when they finished that first earth section and they thought they were done. And it kind of closes. Let's put you into the next domain. So, oh no, I have another 20 questions to answer. I just started the life science section. And they include accessibility features, just like the other tests on the TOMS platform: English Language Arts, Math, and LPAC. And these are tools with students with disabilities, special education students, students with 504s, or any student actually that we feel like needs extra support. You can actually change the test within the testing system so that there are other tools students can use, text-to-speech, other tools, closed captioning. It's neat that they exist inside of the digital test. So how did we do? We'll start statewide. And there's been anticipation about this, right? This is our first science test in 6 years. How will we all do? Not very well. Statewide performance was very poor. 29% of students statewide were proficient. We do see more students at 5th grade than 8th grade and then high school. This is a low rate of proficiency. And if we compare science to our other standardized tests, and we've reported out multiple times and annually on mathematics and English, and we've noticed, right, that the English scores are higher than math. We've come to expect that from these tests. And now we see science, which is a test that is quite a bit lower even than mathematics.
So,
Yeah.
that mathematics percentage is that the district as well?
We're starting statewide. So these are statewide percentages. And the point of this slide is just to show, in our first year of seeing science, where is this test fitting with what we already have? We know the math tests, we expect scores to be lower. We've expected it every single year. And now we see science is starting even lower than that. On this next slide, what I did do is, we've been taking math and English for 4 years. And we made about 7 percentage points of growth statewide over 4 years. So maybe this isn't the fairest comparison, this slide, because we've been growing on math and English. So if we go back to the first year with math and English, you see it's a little closer. But even in the first year of testing, science is below mathematics. So I think as we look to next year and future years, we're going to see a test that's very rigorous, and there's a lot of growth that needs to happen statewide. We'll look at our scores as well, but our scores are consistent with the state. We know that achievement gaps exist. We've talked a lot about it in this forum. There's been a lot of press about this, that with a new, now 3rd statewide assessment, we see those disparities exist again, and maybe even in slightly larger percentages, but pretty consistent. And for us, our significant subgroups are white and Hispanic Latino. Statewide, there was almost 30 percentage points difference statewide between Hispanic Latino performance and white performance. And then we also see significant differences in economically disadvantaged students versus not economically advantaged. And we know that our student population, we are majority Hispanic Latino, and we're majority economically disadvantaged. So you look at that 15.6 area, it's quite a bit different. And we also see that there are gaps. This one is really striking, actually, on the English learner front. Look at how low that English learner percentage is on this test compared with fluent and English only. We don't typically see English learner below students with disabilities in that way. But our English learners struggled on this test. Our students with disabilities underperformed their peers. So if we look at us and where we were on performance, this is our first year. This is our baseline year. So when you look at the dashboard, it's not really there. There's no color because this is year 1. We'll have a color on the dashboard next year. We're at 17% district-wide. Like the state average, we were highest in 5th, second highest in 8th, and 3rd and 11th. 12th grade is a little bit of an anomaly. We will test our students in 11th grade. Students have to be tested once in high school. But if there are students that didn't get captured, so like at some point if a student comes in from out of the country or another school district where they haven't been tested or out of state, or for us, and we have a potential with our grade level assignment, a student could potentially skip 11th grade. So we'll always, I think, as we report out, have this small group in 12th grade, but I don't think that's really representative. I think 11th grade is where we'll look for our overall proficiency. We also see that we have achievement gaps, though I will say our achievement gaps, percentage-wise, are not as severe as the statewide in those top 3 areas, though they are in the bottom. Students with disability, we had 0 students with disability score proficient, which is surprising because this year we had students with disability was our #1 growing group on ELA and Math. They made the most growth out of 87, but that was not the case in their performance on CAST. As we look at what our next steps are going to be as a district, teachers, students, how do we improve our performance? I think we've got some really clear steps that we need to take. Number 1 is curriculum adoption. Just like with Common Core, the state released standards, and then we taught those for years with no curriculum and then an assessment. So we've had no curriculum for NGSS, and then we just gave an assessment, right? So teachers have for years been kind of going on the internet, figuring it out. We have some supplemental curriculum, but there's been no real curriculum that is articulated to teach these standards. So it's essential that we, and all districts, are in this process of adopting curriculum. We will begin interim assessments. We've gotten real good at math and English about finding interim or benchmark assessments so that we don't just wait to test the students at the end of the year. We test them throughout the year. We know who needs support. We need to start doing that for science. And we'll look at Illuminate and MAP, which have now or will have assessments that can help us with this. Teachers, our site administrators spoke with their teams about this to try to get some feedback as to where teachers felt. Should be our next steps. Teachers did say we need additional training on standards. Even though they've been around for a long time, we need training on that. And we need to spend some time analyzing the CAST question types and making sure we're giving our students the opportunity to answer questions like this. Additional student practice with CAST, practice and training tests. Evaluate the science instructional minutes at CES. I think this is, we'll talk about challenges in a minute. This will be a challenge. We focus on English language arts and math so much, and for good reason. Not just because we have an assessment, because they're important foundational skills. But now we have this other high stakes test. How do we fit that in? We haven't really built a schedule like that. We haven't prioritized science with instructional minutes. We haven't had math and English. That'll be something we'll have to have a conversation around. How do we do it? Ensure high school students have 3 years of science preceding CAST testing. The board's action to make 3 years of science required is important. What we saw with this test is there were students who took this test who didn't have the 3 classes really, didn't have those 3 years, so it wasn't required. And there were some students who took it because of that who had a gap. So they hadn't taken science in a year, so now they're taking a test. Like, why am I taking this test? I'm not been in science, right? We need to make sure all students take freshman, sophomore, junior science, and then take the test immediately while it's fresh in their minds. And then increase focus at the high school level with NGSS and CAS versus CTE. Our high school team of science teachers is amazing, and they do such a great job with CTE and the 11 elements that they judge their program by. But I think we're going to have some conversation on sharing that focus with NGSS and CAS. It can't be all CTE all the time. We have to have a different conversation. And how do we integrate it? But we need to be talking about that more than exclusively this conversation on CTE and the 11 elements. Challenges, I probably spoke to these already, but I'll go through them a little more. Yeah, increasing minutes at CES is going to require some creativity. How do we do that? Shifting and sharing the focus with CTE. Adopting high school curriculum will be an issue not just for us, but for everyone. The state doesn't really approve curriculum for high school like it does middle and elementary. And there really isn't CTE curriculum or NGSS curriculum for our high school team. And we have a very unique program, so that'll be an interesting challenge. And then ensuring coverage of earth science standards without a standalone course. We don't have an earth science course per se, so we need to make sure that those standards are getting covered at the high school level within the courses that we have. So that's what I have for you tonight. I can take any questions that you might have.
So I'm just really curious about the fact that there's no adopted curriculum by the state. obviously people know what the standards are who are creating curriculum. When did it become first available?
It came out, the state released a list in the fall.
Just this fall?
Yep, after the start of the school year.
Okay.
We then went and we went to the county, we viewed the curriculum that was available, we chose curriculum, chose 4 publishers that were potentials, we had them visit us, we chose 2, and then we started piloting. So this year almost doesn't even count as a year of curriculum. For everyone, this is across the entire state.
Good for you for jumping on it, and
Yeah, good for us, and thankful for the county. The county really helped coordinate so that each school district didn't have to communicate with all those publishers. So the county assisted. Yeah, and kudos to teachers for doing their best to find curriculum to meet their needs in the meantime. None of us have had articulated curriculum as it applies to the standards.
I was also going to share something historically, and Indira and Jeff will remember this. I think it was probably about 2014 when they first rolled out the computer testing. They brought them in, and we all took the test. And it was so complicated. And I'm sure that the online testing has come a long way since then. But it was great to illustrate to us that we're moving into this completely different type of test taking. So I'm imagining that the math and the ELA online tests are evolving, and this also will evolve too.
Yeah, the SBAC for English Language Arts and Math looks quite similar to probably how it looks. It's got split screen, it's got drag and drop. I was thinking about the other day, I was thinking, it's interesting, our students now who have taken this year after year, this is kind of all that they know. But it is unique and rigorous. And I think, especially for students that need encouragement, it requires a level of perseverance that you continue on. Because they're hard questions, and you've got to keep going. They're long tests. This is the longest test that we have as far as length of test administration.
Yeah, so in the beginning there was even an element of just teaching the kids how to take the test.
Correct.
How to make the split scenes roll.
Correct. Yeah, and I think a lot of ways our students are there because it's that same interface now for ELA, math, science, and LPAC. What I would say is, I think the scores are, I think they're a little discouraging statewide, right? But I don't think lost in that shouldn't be the excitement that should come along with NGSS. This should be exciting. This is exciting science. This isn't memorizing facts.
Oh, I totally agree with you. So I have a question because you're right, the scores are discouraging. What changes from this curriculum to the past curriculum and the textbooks that we've been using for years on end? What explanation would you give for such test scores or retention of the student?
I'm sorry, can you say it one more time?
You said the new curriculum just came out. What changes in the new curriculum?
Yeah. The new curriculum, which is in line with the NGSS standards, the question really is about how are these standards different than the old standards?
Correct.
Yeah, so these standards, one, they have engineering elements to it. They have a lot more problem-solving elements, so it's, as opposed to just memorizing a list of facts. Because that's kind of what we do with the old standards. We memorize a list of facts, and then we answer level 1 basic questions. Can I remember all the facts? That was kind of the old testing, right? The new standards encourage problem solving, prototyping, collaboration, really deep thinking. And that's great. That's what we want our students to do. We don't want students who can just memorize. We want students to be able to actually problem solve, right? And I think it's ambitious for the state on all of our, because that's consistent not just with NGSS, but on all these Common Core standards as well. And it's great for the state to be ambitious, and it's our job to get there. But the bar is set much, much higher with these new standards than they were just simply memorization. I think the internet has something to do with that too. We can get basic facts, we can Google that.
So
now how do we problem solve?
I enjoy talking to teachers every so often, and they said these new testings identify some of the problems the students were going through. Have these problems been identified in regards to this test?
I'm not sure what the teachers are referring to. I can say that we have accessibility tools for students who have disabilities. Some sites, especially elementary school, where we're doing a lot of benchmark testing within the testing system, it will give you some feedback as to what standards students are struggling on. And that's the whole concept behind benchmark testing, is that we test students frequently so we can catch their areas where they struggle, and then we can do intervention coursework or in the classroom intervention work. And I think we've gotten very good at that with English language arts and math. We never used to do that work, but now we need to start doing it with science in a way we've never done it. Yeah.
One thing I would like to share, one thing I would like to share is that today, in our staff meeting, we went over the supports that are available for students who have either IEPs or 504s or are actively struggling or English learners. And even from last year to this year, some of those supports have changed. And so last year was the first year that we actually got scores for the CAST, but in terms of how deep we could go with those, with the designated and embedded supports, was not as deep. So for example, one of the things we noticed on the list now is that there's actually about 4 additional supports that we can give in CAST, including on some of those questions that you can pull down a calculator to use, because again, this is testing science, not math. Also some more options for having read aloud that wasn't as more options last year. And then also for students who have IEPs, having access to tools like simple multiplication tables. Again, part of the test does address math, but it is not a math test, and I think that the state is updating that.
Awesome, thank you.
Go ahead.
I'm curious about what has happened to what used to be the lab, and what are the 3 or 4 science areas that are going to be in the high school curriculum? Are there still areas in science?
There are, and I don't know that I know what happened to the lab. I do know that our high school science teachers especially have done a great job of using state funding through CTE to purchase lots and lots of equipment. We have some amazing equipment that students can access. We almost have a different problem with storage and where we can put it. We have our course of study, but the high school level, it has become more aligned with CTE than some of the traditional.
And what is CTE?
CTE is career technical education, which is a great thing for kids that we're preparing them for the workforce. We have an amazing CTE program, and what I was trying to share was, at this point too, we make sure that that program is also addressing the needs of the new standards for NGSS, not just the standards for CTE, but they're separate standards. We're a small program, so we need to kind of do both of those at the same time.
I don't have my answer yet, but I'll form the question better.
And I will be here afterwards if you'd like to talk.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other
You're of
questions?
course welcome to come in anytime to the district office.
Yeah, come see me.
And see him.
So, Michael, would it be safe to say that since we haven't been testing for a long time in science, it hasn't been getting the attention that math and English have?
I think that's fair.
And then, so maybe giving it more focus, aren't these scores going to go up?
I think you'll see that happen statewide.
It just seems logical.
It's going to light a fire and put some focus on science. I think it's going to put more focus than we've ever seen, but that is going to take a mind shift on the part of our staffs to understand this is really important, and we're going to have to spend more time on it. And that's a little different. It's a conversation at the elementary school and high school or junior high school where we're departmentalized. Elementary teachers teach a lot of preps, they teach a lot of things. How are they now going to become better educated about science and more inclusive of their instruction?
Yeah, I'm very hopeful for the science program to educate our kids on science. As the global climate change is a reality, contrary to what many politicians might think. Just look at the polar ice caps, as simple as that, year after year after year. And please, any help that we can give these kids to be better educated in the realm of science, I feel it our obligation.
Yeah, thank you. And I think we'll see it, especially at the high school level. I mean, our program is so rigorous and so vibrant. The work that's happening at the high school is amazing. Though I do think, like I said, there needs to be a little shift in making sure that our focus is also really inclusive of what these standards are, not just getting kids prepared to go to the workforce for science.
I think too, collaboration with the teachers in terms of, I just was overhearing a conversation the other day about how, you know, you can collaborate in the math and English with the science, so you're not losing minutes. Maybe you're working on science writing in English, maybe you're, and I know the teachers are so collaborative about that kind of stuff, that's really amazing. I went to the STEAM symposium at the fairgrounds, and I was mostly blown away by my own kids, of course, but there was 2 big pavilions full of, they weren't science projects, they were more long-term solutions to problems that a lot of them had to do with coding. It was amazing.
And that's what NGSS should do. It should get kids inspired. It's much more inspiring to do that work than memorization. So I think lost.
And also get us ready for AI and the future of, you know, science is going to go in a totally different direction.
Thank you.
Thanks. Anybody else? Questions? Okay. So moving on to 7, information discussion and correspondence. 7.1, we're looking at board policies and administrative regulations. First reading. So we have some more board policies up for editing and approval. I don't think we're approving tonight, we're just going over them. So we're looking at BPAR 6. Should we do these in order? Do you want to do it like that, Michael?
Yep.
Yeah? Okay. So I know that a couple of them, it's just a matter of just changing some of the verbiage. So,
I can speak through.
yeah, why don't you speak
This
through
first
them?
one, course of study, this is a recommendation by CSBA. These are just really small changes throughout on wording. I don't think there's real substantive change there. Extracurricular and co-curricular activities. Trustee Galindo has requested regulation be brought to the board. If you'd like to speak to the rationale, we can have discussion on that.
I would. The rationale behind the changes, we had a group of incoming 9th graders last year that had 2 extenuating circumstances that weren't considered. The changes are in the eligibility waiver process and probationary period. The extenuating circumstances were the eligibility board was never formed. The second extenuating circumstances were due to limited access in our summer school program. These students were not offered summer school, and which is this opportunity is allowed in these same bylaws, and because and this has been an ongoing topic about summer school with me, is we offer the kids that are nearest benchmark access to summer school, but the students with the greater needs aren't invited, and that's troubling because they would have been able to make up credits and the grades bumped up where they might have been eligible. And as far as the eligibility review board not being established, outlined in our AR 6145. I couldn't tell you when the last time that board was formed. And so the minor changes that I'm hoping to bring are just simple changes. One option would be all students entering 9th grade would be eligible until the end of the first quarter and would then remain eligible or become ineligible based on their first quarter grades. The second one is a policy from a neighboring school district where entering 9th graders with a GPA average under 2.0 will be eligible until the end of the first quarter, then would remain eligible or become ineligible based on their first quarter grades. This quarter would not count against the discretionary probationary period. Either changes or any recommendation from the administrators, there's so much going on in that age group of the transition into high school, the body making the changes as they do in that time frame, and just the extenuating circumstances. Granted, the waiver might not have been granted by the board, But that opportunity to appeal to the board was never offered for the kids. And I feel a simple change aligned with neighboring school districts isn't out of line. And by no means am I saying academic performance should be rewarded, not at all. But if we have bylaws that require certain processes to be there, then either we should fulfill them or change it to be more accepting. I know there's, and I'll just leave it at that. I mean, I have more for the argument, but I just think more compassion and understanding with merits and benefit to these kids. Because once they realize what it is to perform at the high school arena, then that GPA is so much more important because they don't have it. You don't bring the grades, you don't, like, simple as that. That's mine. And Paula has my recommendations in that email. If you would like, she can forward it to anybody.
Does anybody else want to comment to that? Because basically what we would do is we would, if nobody else wants to add anything to that, we would write it up and it would come for approval, and at that point, we would either approve or disapprove the changes.
I'm not sure about the board, but we can talk about that later too.
I'll make just a few
Yeah,
comments.
I'd love to hear what you have to say.
As we think about athletic eligibility, I think it's it's a great opportunity to look at our values. I think it's demonstrative of how we believe what's important and what's not. Whether we value high standards or second chances. Those are different things about right. Where are our values? And so I think it's an interesting discussion. I'm going to ask Mr. Guerrero to make some comments. The principal's got a vested interest in what happens at the site, so we can give some perspective as well.
And when initially I was looking at this changes, it is some of these changes are changes that I had in my previous district. The difference is that in my previous district, we were getting about 35% of our students coming from outside of our attendance area. So it's very difficult to follow up on who was grades and things because Q files were not properly sent to us, and we had no idea where kids fell in terms of the eligibility. So I could see a policy like that for a district like that or a school like that, where you have an influx of different schools coming into your high school. Here, the 8th graders are our kids, right? They're not coming from outside of our area. We already have a engagement, trying to get the 8th graders engaged in their academics and to take an active role in getting good grades. And in a way, I kind of fear that losing this ability that they need to have 2.0 to play sports, it would just further, go into that culture that it's okay to fail, and especially if nothing else is going to happen. But with that said, it's just my opinion at this point, and I think there's other stakeholders that are important to come to this conversation. Our athletic department, our ADs are definitely part of that, including, from people that have vested interest in seeing these kids be eligible, coaches per se, or other people that are involved in sports academics. I think it would be important to bring to this conversation.
I would like to respond to that if I may. Mr. Guerrero, I appreciate your point of view, and I respect it as well. And we are, by no means, let me re-emphasize, I am not trying to give these kids a pass, but we practice restorative justice. And we should take that same concept to these students when the adults are not doing their job, clearly outlined in our bylaws. The boards would never form. Summer school opportunity. We have the summer school principal up here specifically say we need more room for the greater need. And that was never addressed by this board. And that opportunity also is clearly outlined in our bylaws. And then again, it is your point of view that matters most as principal and head of this ship. And all I can do is just bring to light the deficiencies prior to your arrival that was here. And these kids, the damage, they missed out a year of football. The ones that I personally interacted with. And so it was troubling to them to say, and all the other history behind what led them to that point. And so restorative justice, restorative education kind of go hand in hand. And that's not to mention that all kids just arrive here at 7th and 8th grade. Most, as I was talking to other athletic directors throughout the county, they were shocked to hear about our policy. But yeah, you're right. We have one elementary, one junior high, and our scores are still bad. So, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So, I'm not sure what we do at this point. I agree with Raul that we should probably have more of the stakeholders involved in the conversation. And then I also think we should take a look a little bit deeper about what you're talking about. Perhaps we leave the policy as it is, but we add a line that gives them the ability to appeal it to somebody if they're in fact specific cases.
This is the first read
Okay.
to hear it and discuss it. And then next month will be time to act on it, or we can postpone that if we want to take time to hear from other stakeholders,
Perfect.
have other information brought forward, or form a committee that will look into it. So what we want to do.
Does anybody else have anything you want to say about it?
Yeah, I'm just curious I don't know the history of this. Why wasn't the board formed to hear the waivers? Like, did somebody drop the ball? Were people making appeals and there was just no one to appeal to, or what happened?
So that is correct. Upon Raul's arrival, Coach Clay's we had a group of incoming freshmen. They are offered a waiver, by the way, so this wouldn't, they still have the opportunity to participate in sports if they were to apply for the waiver. But the waiver isn't a guarantee. The board specifically outlined and says, an eligibility review board shall be established by the principal to consider eligibility waiver requests. The ineligible student may petition a review board regarding their ineligibility. The review board will determine if there were any extenuating circumstances that shall consider regarding the eligibility of the student. The review board shall be empowered to grant eligibility waivers as is consistent to the school laws and district policies. The review board shall not mandate to grant waivers, however, they may deny waivers requests in some circumstances. The review board shall be comprised of a school principal, teacher, athletic director, a student, and a parent. The decision of the review board may be appealed to the board for final decision. That board was never formed, and wasn't formed last year, nor the year before.
I can speak
Yeah,
to that a little
please.
bit. That's correct. I will say that idea of having a board to hear these is unusual. You won't typically see that in policy. What you will typically see is the principal will play that role. The principal will hear appeals and will respond to them. So I don't know the history of when that showed up in our policy, but I think for a new principal who comes in, to have something like that buried in the board policy and not aware of it is a challenging thing. And I think honestly, given our scale and the many hats that we all wear, I think efficiency is very important. So I think when you can have a principal respond to something like that versus creating a board, and if we're going to consider policy, that's my 2 cents, is I think we, on that particular issue, I think we just need to streamline that sort of sense. Like most districts, it says principal here.
And if I may continue, it says summer school credit shall be counted toward making up scholastic deficiencies incurred in the grading period immediately preceding. Again, the summer school expansion, and if these kids aren't offered summer school, that's an extenuating circumstance. When the adults don't do what is mandated or required, how are we to punish the kids?
I think that's accurate. When students take a summer school course and they get a better grade than they got in their course during the school year, that grade replaces the other grade and improves their GPA. So it allows them a chance to become eligible. And you're correct that some students this year in that grade didn't have that opportunity. And I don't think that's really a function of board policy. I think that's a different question about the program is envisioned. We never offered summer school to rising graders. So that's a program issue. I don't know if that's necessarily a policy.
It should also be described as an extenuating circumstance.
Yes. I know what I'm saying. I don't know that ultimately policy, it just needs to be how programs are needed.
Well, I mean, I think we can find some middle ground on this and how this can catch something that fell through the cracks, if that's what it catches.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, if we can have, I mean, we can all policy this stuff to death with reviews and so on and so forth, but I think some common sense approaches, I've never heard of a policy waiver review board since I've been here. So, I mean, but if we can figure out some way to accommodate for maybe some extenuating circumstances, and then maybe it may not work, but, I think the buck kind of stopped with you, Raul, because that's kind of, your bailiwick, and if you get the ADs and some other people involved. So I'd like to maybe see that come back to us with maybe some ideas on how we can make
I
that.
think we can, I like the idea of hearing from other stakeholders who are impacted.
Yeah.
But I think we can bring back some of their statements, as well as some proposed policy. We also already have a proposed policy, we can wait for those in the future.
And I would agree, Raul, your opinion matters most. Benefit from this, one of them kids that weren't able to play, got his grades up and was able to play the last couple of games and maintained a 4.0 today. So granted, some didn't perform as well, but some learned their lesson. So, case by case.
I'm curious to know if this is affecting, what is the number of students we're talking about here? Because if we are thinking about amending a policy, changing, our process, because it's one student or two at the most, then, we have to be very careful here. And also it has to do with, we as adults, the work that we're doing with students. Years ago, there was a coach and assistant football coach who will gather the students and do, the football players and do the homework before they went to practice with them to make sure that they were keeping their grades up, because it is important if they wanted to play football, they wanted to be at a certain level. So I think that is a bigger discussion than, just trying to, make it work for one or two students.
Coach Irvin was awesome about that. We had a room given for the football program with the teacher. The head coach felt practice time was more important. And so, this is, like I said, restorative justice, restorative education, and the adults don't do what the adults should be doing, what the kids not to do. But balance it out.
Okay, so I think we know where we stand, right? Okay. So, yes, go
I'm
ahead.
really sorry, but this is where I don't understand about the board. This is a substantive discussion, and a lot of separate things come. And then what comes next month? Just different ideas from the different stakeholders, and then you talk about it again?
Correct.
Okay.
That's exactly right. So that was just a discussion item, not an action item.
Right.
So then we had more discussion around it, and I think we gave them relatively good guidance on how to go back. They want to talk with the stakeholders a little bit more, and then they'll come back to us.
With written ideas?
It possibly will come back as another discussion item first,
Yeah.
and then the next meeting it'll be an actual adoption, correct? It might be that way. Yeah. Say it again.
Depends on us.
Depends on us, yeah. So we're putting it back into Raul's court as the principal to discuss with the stakeholders and the director of curriculum to see what we'll do. Understand? Yeah?
Well, I understand, but I've been to a couple of these meetings where all of a sudden something happens and there's nothing over there to see what you're voting on, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm curious to know if the ideas will be in writing when the board agenda comes out.
Before we vote on it, yes. That may be next month, it may not be. But
I just want to know if I'll see the ideas.
Yes, because we have to approve all of, we are basically re-adopting all of our board policies. So we get a whole big set from CSBA, we alter them to our particular district. We just went through the process over the last year and a half of going through all of our district policies. And now we're taking them one by, you can see we're doing about 5 or 6 each meeting. And so this one was specifically brought up by him last meeting to delve into it deeper. And so now that's what we'll do. So they'll come back with something based on his opinion, along with some other stakeholders, and then we'll talk about it again.
And before anything is mentioned, it's open for public discussion. So anybody could discuss that one.
Thank you very much.
Perfect. Okay, so then were there any other questions on any of the other changes that were in yellow on the policies?
I had a minor question.
Okay.
High school graduation requirements. It seemed like a lot of the changes that were made, they were courses of study, were replacing he/she with a student. And then this one, I see a lot of he/she, and I just thought for consistency's sake, I don't know where that language came from in the first place.
Yeah, I think that's part of this CSBA's recommendation, of course, the study was to make things more gender neutral. I can just speak briefly to high school graduation requirements. We have a really outdated policy which has to do with grade level assignment. We do grade level assignment based on credit acquisition, which is a really outdated concept that leads to some strange consequences. For example, a student comes in to our district from Mexico as an 18-year-old with 0 credits. He's a freshman. So freshman advisory, freshman PE. It also means potentially students skipping grades, and then we get out of line on state testing. And so what we're recommending is just to get rid of that whole section and have a more traditional policy of grade level assignment, which is based on age. That's really the impetus of that graduation requirements.
So moving forward though on his comment to make sure that we're consistent through everything.
Yeah, we're going to have to learn.
Yeah.
That's it.
Others? No? Okay. All right. So we'll move past that discussion and go to 8.1, correspondence, Napa County Office of Education letter, first interim report. This is a correspondence letter from Napa County Office of Education, and they analyze each and every one of our reports that we make to the state of California, one of which you're going to see tonight, second interim. This letter has to do with first interim, and as they go through the report, they look at different fiscal indicators, and so this letter is just helping us with information as to those fiscal indicators about cash flow, about reserve levels, and labor negotiations. All right, moving on to reports. 9.1, Nicole. So right now, we have started the the English language proficiency assessment for our grades 3 through 6 students. This is now the second year that we've done this test. And so a little different from the previous year was that this entire test is online, including the speaking section. We also have outside examiners who've been coming in and assisting with the speaking portion of the test. In terms of our plan for testing this year is that we, based on teacher feedback last year, they wanted to have sufficient time to start looking at the Smarter Balanced Assessment, which is the springtime testing. So we ended up splitting by grades. So grades 3 through 6 are completing the English learner assessment. And then when we get into April and May, grades K through 2 will then take this assessment. That means that they will have a longer time within the program requiring English. So we're hopeful that that will lead to higher scores in that grade.
Additionally, we're very happy this year that despite cut score adjustments on the LPAC that went into effect at in the spring of last year, we had 34 students be redesignated from the English Learner Program. And again, that's keeping pretty similar to previous years. I think the highest we've had has been like 38. So it's within that same range. And so I do believe we are going to be celebrating that in an upcoming meeting. What's also interesting is that once a student is redesignated, it means that they are no longer taking the English Learner Assessment. So some students have started to ask that as they've been taking large group assessments of, well, what happens if I get a high score on here? And I said, well, then you get the redesignation. In terms of, I mentioned in the last board report that we had done a survey of our grades 4 through 6 students with regard to our academic awards assembly. We have new staff on campus and in our leadership team. We wanted to revisit that because when we were just even looking at questions of, well, why did we get this award? And it's like, well, this is, I guess, how it's been. So we did check in. We created a Google form for grades 4 through 6, and I want to commend those students for how thoughtful they were in going through and answering questions. And so the first question we asked is, did you get some kind of academic award? The respondents, 59.8, indicated that they did get some kind of academic award. And then when we were looking at GPA, in the elementary school we use standards-based report cards. So basically the teachers select the power standards and then they look at the assessment results in relation to those standards, and then those become the grades, which are 1 through 4, and not letter grades on the report card. And so we were curious in terms for these students who are getting GPA awards, is this important to you, or is this somewhat important to you? And so of our students, 58.8 said it was very important, followed by 27.1 that said it was somewhat important. So that's still in the 60s, or excuse me, in the 70s. So that shows that students are valuing that GPA award. And then in terms of looking at the other awards we give, which is basically we had growth and effort that were combined together as one award. There was interest in splitting those up. So an award for growth and an award for effort. And that led to a very robust conversation on leadership about, well, what does growth mean? What does effort mean? And then the last question that students were asked is, what motivates you to do well at school? And so the number one answer was 48.7% of the students said they were motivated by the awards. So that shows that doing the awards is important to quite a few of our students. And then 38.5 said they were motivated by teacher, peer, and parent praise, which again, during those academic awards assemblies, that's happening as well because we do invite the community. So what we're going to be doing for our next awards, because this Friday is the end of the trimester, we're going to be dividing it even more. We usually have 2 awards assemblies. We're going to actually have 3. And so K1 is going to have their awards assembly, 2-3 is going to have their awards assembly, and then grades 4 through 6 is going to have their awards assembly. We are going to continue with the GPA, but we are going to be separating the growth and the effort awards. And so again, I was very impressed with the thoughtfulness of our students, and we always have the what other things would you like to see? And in many cases, they would just like free ride. Well, I like the awards. So it was good to get that feedback. Finally, I am grateful to the Family Center. We did have training on Census 2020. It is a very important
activity for our families to participate in, because the count does directly lead to programs and services, not only for the community, but also for our schools. My understanding was that we had about 15 parents come, and those parents did request that we have an evening presentation as well, and so I know Indira and I have been working back and forth to get that evening presentation, but it is very informative for our families to see, and I think the more front-loading that we can do for our community as we prepare for this activity, I believe it's in April, correct, that the packets are going home. I'm hoping that that will lead to a higher turnout.
Right at the senior high school, just in LCAP goal number 1, ensuring academic excellence for all students. Just to let you know, we were talking about CAS scores, and those are scores that were shared with our staff, of course, with our science department specifically at this point. And they, of course, are taking this very seriously. Our scores are not where we want them to be. They're already looking at ways to increase the amount of physical science that is in the curriculum to address some of the deficiencies that came out in that test. So that's a way that we're looking at ensuring academic excellence for all students. Also, this week bulletins, if you guys get the bulletin and you noticed, I've included a new section called learning opportunities for our students. Just to, again, showcase some of the excellent learning opportunities that our students are having in the classrooms or outside of the class. So this week we featured the STEAM symposium that was mentioned earlier, and how our students participated in this Sonoma County Office of Education at the fairgrounds, where they were able to present their work that they've been doing in class and then have it evaluated by community members. In regards to LCAP goal number 2, providing a safe, healthy, positive school environment, the winter sports are coming to an end, and both our boys and girls basketball programs were league champs, so very proud of that. Our girls lost this weekend the NCS Division 6 championship game versus Laytonville, but they played with a lot of heart and a lot of determination, but unfortunately they came short. But I also wanted to publicly thank the Calistoga Athletic Boosters and Calistoga Community Chess for providing us a rotor bus to take some of our students up there to Laytonville to cheer on the Lady Wildcats. They will continue to play this Wednesday versus Valley Christian Academy of Roseville, and that's part of the CIF tournament that's starting. And also spring sports are going on. We have a great turnout. Again, I've been told that this is the best turnout that they've had all year in all seasons of sports, so including the spring sports with baseball, softball, track and field, swimming, and tennis going on. So looking forward to success in that as well. At this point, I also wanted to mention that a lot of our students really deal with social emotional challenges. So I wanted to publicly thank our counselor, Michelle Craig Morales, but also our therapists that work with our students. They really dedicate a lot of time and a lot of care for our students to get that extra support that they need. In terms of trying to get our students more engaged too, we're putting out 2 new classes for next year. Hopefully we get enough sign-ups. We have ethnic studies as one of the choices for students to pick for their electives, and also film appreciation class. And LCAP goal number 3, increasing parent engagement. Just wanted to mention that we do have a TLAC meeting on Wednesday, and also PICA is starting the first class on Saturday, and of course we start with our WASP visit on Sunday. So that's all for that.
Okay, next we have Michael.
So this must be our year for audits. Another one.
Lucky you.
As informed earlier this year, we have a CalSTRS audit. Begins this month. I've already started uploading some documents. It's with Ron Gaznik. He's the lead auditor for Crow LLP. It looks like it's going to be pretty much off-site. They'll be requesting documents, and we'll upload them. And they're looking for payroll records, timesheets, contracts, just making sure that we follow CalSTRS rules for compensation. And I'll speak with them on the phone on Thursday. I will ask them why we were chosen, and how often we should plan on this, I'm sure. There's some things happening with the state and CalPads. The state has pretty much changed every single course code on the state level. This happens kind of in the background. We have areas that our teachers see the course numbers that we create, but then we need to tell the state what those course numbers attach to for the state codes. And so we're working very closely with our CalPads contractor on changing all the codes. And it shouldn't have an impact on teachers. It'll be something that, again, that happens in the background. It shouldn't have any real impact on the sites right now. Though I think there are some changes that we'll have to discuss if it changes how we schedule our students. The state is really discouraging mixed grade classes for middle and high school, and because we have one site, we do a lot of, put 7th graders in the same room as a 9th grader. That might be a good opportunity. The state's discouraging that. Or if you do it, you at least have to set the course up in 2 sections, record them separately. We're also discouraging combined classes, like we have social studies 7 and 8. We'll have students stay in the social studies class for 2 years and get 2 years of content. The state is asking us to either split those out, or at the very least, have 2 sections that the teacher has on their computer so that we can record them separately. So, again, not a major impact today on the sites, but a lot of work with technology and trying to figure out how to meet the growing demands of the state and what's happening with CalPads. It just continues to grow, that the state is asking for more and more information. The second or third pretty significant changes this year with CalPads. We have training on Wednesday afternoon with St. Helena. Our managers will join their managers for training with North Bay Schools and Service Authority. It's the first time we've done anything like this, I think. It's a liability training for our managers. And I say it's great to have a partner in St. Helena. We get along very well, and that's advantageous to us both. So to be able to join them for training, that's a good thing. And then lastly, as we prepare for the April PD Day, the culturally responsive instruction training, our trainers did empathy interviews this last Friday with 10 individuals. These are current and former students and parents from the elementary, middle, and high school level. They asked questions about their experience with the district, what made learning easy, what made learning difficult. Did they see their culture represented and respected in their experience? They felt that was important. And a series of other questions. And the interviews were videotaped with the permission of the parents. The trainers will condense those 10 interviews into a short video that we'll use with the staff to generate discussion. It's going to be, I think it'll be great to make that training meaningful and real, rather than just us having conversation. We get to hear from our students, current former students and parents who are our real stakeholders.
I would like to see that video when it's out.
Yeah. So the interviews were Friday, so they're kind of working right now on condensing it. That'll be used as part of the training we're happy to share.
And we have a couple of things tonight. Last week, Michael Rhea and Donna Anderson were here for PTI, and PTI is the transportation consulting company that we hired to do the transportation study with St. Helena. Another opportunity to work with St. Helena, our good neighbors. And they were here on site visiting with us. They met with myself, Chris, Aaron, and Michael all at different times just to get a feel for our different ways that we, worked in the transportation department or transported our kids. We dealt with special ed, we dealt with regular home to school. They also met with Napa Valley Unified, where they went and met with Napa Valley and got a feel for what it is exactly Napa Valley does. There's a lot of regulation that Napa Valley does for our district, that if we do have to go out to contract with someone else, we're going to have to pick up those regulation pieces and make sure that we're following the regulation, and we'll have to take that over. They were here for 2 whole days, and they should have a report, hopefully by April, next board meeting, we'll have a report to the board of their conclusion of the study and what their recommendations are going forward. Escape training update, we're into our start of our 3rd month of escape training. I'm out of the office Tuesday through Friday for training, and currently we're working on moving over all of our employee data, all of our vendor data, and all of our account code structures, and we've had problems with all 3 of them because of DS. So it is going to require a lot of work once it does get moved over. We'll have to manually go in and change a lot of things just because the communication between DS and Escape is not going very well. But tomorrow we start to learn how to do payroll in the new system, so it should be fun. So I just want to stop here and just say thank you to you three who are just here today. Because I know you got a lot going on in the office and missing a few people, so thank you for all your hard work. Thank you. 10.1 consent agenda. So the way the consent agenda works is actions are proposed for the consent agenda are deemed routine in nature and they're enacted by one motion. There'll be no separate discussion of these items unless a member of the board, the audience, or staff request a specific item to be removed from the consent agenda for separate action. So at this point, I just want to make sure everybody's okay with everything on the consent agenda. Okay, so I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda. Indira, and
Second.
perfect, Jeff, second. And roll call vote, President Elbishan, aye. Clerk Reed?
Aye.
Trustee Lopez Jones?
Aye.
Trustee Maxfield?
Aye.
Trustee Galindo?
Aye.
And no student representative is present tonight. Okay, moving on to action items. Protocol for action items include a staff presentation, questions from the board, public input, deliberation by the board, and voting by the board. During public input, there will be a 3-minute time limit per person. So only, there are one. Okay. Maureen, you could start with the second interim financial report.
Okay, here we are in March already, in second interim time. So I like to do this just at the beginning of all my reports. It gives a very clear understanding of what interim reporting is. Second interim actually runs through January 31st of all expenditures, but we also report out our projected budget of what we see that budget being through the end of the year. This has to go to the county by March 15th, and then the county has to send it on to the state after that. Some different things we use to develop the second interim. We use School Services, who is a financial advisor to the state of California, school districts in the state of California. They have a dartboard that has projections based on outgoing years. We use a common message developed by all of the county offices throughout the state, and that's a committee called BASC. And then we use the 1920 state budget and the 2021 governor's January proposal. So if there are significant changes to the proposal for the upcoming years, I do implement that into the second interim report. And then we also use local control funding formula and local property tax reports. Oops. So this is a look at changes from our 1920 adopted budget to where we are today at our 1920 second interim. And so you can see that, of course, our beginning balance is the same. Our revenues have increased by over 1.7 million since budget adoption. And a lot of that is one-time money, but it is also a difference in our property tax revenue. When we projected the budget at adoption, we were projecting a 4% increase, and now we are seeing that we might come in somewhere more like 7.97. So that brought an extra about $600,000 from budget adoption to second interim. And then the majority of the rest of that 1.7 is one-time funding or carryovers that have been rebudgeted from last year. Expenditures, we've increased expenditures by 1.6 million. And I'll explain in the next couple of slides where all those expenditures come from. And then you can see at the bottom the ending fund balance differences. So we went from 506 of an ending fund balance increase from last year, and we're looking at 680 right now. So the revenue changes since budget adoption, I already talked about the local property tax income. We've also increased federal funding for about $241,000. That comes from Title I and Title II carryover from 1819. And then this year, as you know, we did consolidated out, we brought forth Title III funding, so we're seeing about a $47,000 increase from that in our federal funding increases.
State funding is increased by $317,000, and that is some CTIG carryover, which is our CTE grant from prior years. And then also about $241,000 of that 317 is property tax backfill due to the 2017 wildfires. We were advised not to budget for this at the beginning of the year because they didn't know how much districts were going to get. So we wanted to wait until we actually saw the checks and got to deposit them in the banks before we put them into the budget. And that's why they're newer since budget adoption. Local funding increase is about $616,000, and that's due to Cal Grant, CEF grants, scholarships, all other local grants, all donations, and any local income that we didn't know about that we now know about. All of this is pretty much one-time funding, and so it's not an ongoing income in our local funding increases. On the expense side, certificated salaries have increased by about $117,000. That comes from column changes, so our certificated staff have until I think February 15th to submit new units so they can change columns, so sometimes that is an extra cost to the district after the school year has started. We had more this year than we've had in previous years. That's a good thing. Sub-costs increase. We have some teachers that have been out on long-term leaves, and that has increased our sub-costs. And then professional development, all of those grants and local fundings that you see, we have a lot of that tied to professional development, so we have to increase either extra hourly duties for certificated staff according to grants, or they might be getting professionally developed and need a substitute in the classroom. Classified salaries increased by $162,000, and that's because we increased by 3 FTE. Over two were in the special ed category, and then we did have the support position from the district office that was hired in January. Benefits increased by about $380,000. Anytime you increase salaries, you're going to increase your benefits on the payroll benefit side. Things like workers' comp and unemployment insurance get increased, as well as STRS and PERS if they're a STRS and PERS member. And then on top of that, we kind of changed the way we were doing retiree benefits. That changed. We had an income side for retiree benefits in the budget and also an expense side. So this is the expense side to that. Supplies increased by about $142,000. Again, a lot of one-time funds from either new grants or carryovers being added back into the budget. Services and operating expenditures increased by $522,000. We had almost $110,000 increase in our transportation costs when Happy Valley Unified this year. We have put scholarships back into the budget. That has an increase on the expense side to pay out those scholarships. We had about $110,000 technology expense that was not in budget adoption that had to go in after the adopted budget. And so that's where that comes from. And then software, we increased, we actually did a 7-year software support system through our Title I program at the elementary school, and that was about a $55,000 cost, so that's what that is. And then capital outlay increased by about $173,000, and that was strictly carryover from last year. Our contracts went from last year into this year, and so that money got carried forward to pay out the contracts in 1920. These are our general fund contributions to other programs. So all that property tax revenue that we get on the unrestricted side, we do support other programs with it. The one that costs an extreme amount of money is special education right now. We only see about 27% income on the special education side from the state and federal government. All the rest comes from our general fund. So we are looking at about a $1.8 million contribution to special ed this year. We have seen an increase in our special ed students. Last year we had about 113 students in special ed. This year we have about 122. So we're looking at about a 9 student increase. 14.2% of our students are special ed. State average is about 12.5 as of 17.8. As of 17, 18, I can guarantee you it's increased in 18, 19, but our special ed students are at 14.2 for the district. CS outdoor education, that's about a $77,000 cost. We do get some outside donations. We get a lot of parent donations if they can afford to donate, so that always helps. Routine restricted maintenance, we are required to contribute 3% of our general fund to regular routine maintenance. We're a little higher than that right now because we did have some projects planned for the summer that we wanted to complete. But that 3% is a requirement based on the fact that we do get state funding, and we have gotten state funding in the past for construction projects.
Child Nutrition Services, we're looking at a possible $290,000 contribution. We only see about $324,500 from the state. We are going to have our administrative review this year in our food service department, so it'll be interesting to have the state actually come in and evaluate how our program is being operated and what kind of job we are doing. I think Rose is doing an excellent job in cost containments and increasing our free and reduced lunch students. We've increased that by over 1% this year.
I'm going to go back to get the transportation.
Oh, did I? Sorry. Oh, transportation, huh? So obviously that increased a lot this year because of our Napa Valley Unified contract, but we back in 12-13 received $74,000 from the state in transportation, and we will never see an increase in that again unless our legislatures decide to make it an increase. So we get the $74,000 for the rest of our lives. It is part of our LCFF calculation, so it is like just general revenue for us. But $282,000 is what we spend on the entire program. This is just a look at our general fund, just a little graph of how it's all broken down by certificated salaries, classified salaries, benefits, and then everything else. We spend currently about 73% on employee salaries and benefits, and then that leaves about 27% for all the other things that we do. That includes our special ed contribution, includes outside contracts, things like that. Fiscal challenges. Fiscal challenges in STRS and HERS is very well known for all districts in the state of California right now. We are looking at this year and the next 2 years at a total cost of $501,000. And I think in 21-22 is our last year of STRS, and they'll go back to legislation to possibly increase the contribution that we will be having in that year. But each year they've slowly increased. We saw a little reprieve in 18-19. They gave us a little bit of a break. Doesn't look like that's going to be happening next year. So we'll go back to higher contributions. Special ed costs, as I talked about before, major fiscal challenge for every school district as well in the state of California right now. We increased by over $225,000 in 19-20, and that was a 13.8% increase from last year's expenditures. Cash flow, we are a community-funded district. That means that we get the majority of our money in December and April. We want to make sure that we do maintain solid reserves so that when we get to November, we still have cash in the bank to make payroll and pay all of our bills. It does get tight by November because we're going from April all the way to November, and we're still having those payrolls and we're still paying out all of our bills every month. So cash flow is something that in a community-funded district you definitely have to watch. These are just fiscal challenges looking at this year and going forward. These are commitments we know we have that are ongoing commitments at this point in time. Salary increases, most everyone in the district gets a step and column each year, depending on what year you are. If you're at the top of the scale, you don't, but most of our employees right now are getting step and column, and that's in the certificated and the classified side. And then we have ongoing salary changes since adoption. These are the ongoing salaries that will continue based on the slide before that I talked about the increased salaries in certificated and classified. Home to school transportation increase, again, $109,000 for our increase in with Napa Valley Unified. Increase in employer pension contributions. This is the STRS and PERS piece. So almost $205,000 this year, $206,000 next year, and $90,000 the year after that. That $90,000 could change depending on STRS if they decide to up the ante for employers. And then our special education contribution increase of $225,000, $322,000, and $327,000. And I kind of did a 13% increase on going forward. So for this year, we received a $1.1 million increase in property taxes from last year's actual property taxes. This is still estimated, it's not a given yet, but based on that, we have already committed to $781,000 going forward. And then next year, you can see that if we get a 4% increase on property taxes, which is what is in the projections, our total financial commitments already next year without anything else being looked at. We're already over that in 4%. And then in 21-22, same thing, we're over that by about $86,000. And this isn't just happening in community-funded districts that are being conservative about the tax base growing, but it's also happening in LCFF districts. Most people that are getting their basic COLA increases, they're not able to make just these main commitments going forward. They're already in the red. So in the multi-year projection currently, 1920 beginning balance of 3.5 million, and we look like we will be ending in about an ending fund balance of 5.3, which gives us a 21.17 reserve. And then you can see the other figures going forward. So right now we're looking at 21%, 21%, 21%. These are before negotiations have taken place. These are also, it's not just strict cash that we have in our bank when it says we have a 21% reserve. That does include accounts payable, things that we have to pay out eventually. It also does include accounts receivable. And it also includes restricted funding. So we need to make sure that when we look at this that we're thinking about all the different components that actually make up that percentage. These are all of our other projected ending fund balances of the other funds that we have as a district. We have adult education, but it's pretty much an in and out, so we won't see an ending fund balance there. Cafeteria, we're looking at about $137,000. We have to keep something in cafeteria at the end of the year because we're so far behind on cash, we have to make sure that we have enough to get the year started. Sometimes we don't see our accounts receivable until August and September in cafeteria. Bond Fund 21, looking at about $209,000 left. We'll probably end up with a lot more than that. That was with the plan projection that we were going to get further along than we are in the master plan process, and we might be under contract with an architect by now. That doesn't look like that will happen before maybe June. We might get there. We're still working with that master plan. We did have a steering committee meeting on Monday, and so right now they are beginning to write the plan. They want to meet with a couple other focus groups, and hopefully in the next few months, in April, I think they're planning to come to the board, May. But obviously it's been extended just because scheduling has been really difficult to get meetings planned and be able to meet. Fund 25 developer fees, we're looking at about $166,000 there. And Fund 35, that's our state funding. That $429,000 is money we received for CES modernization a while back. So I need to transfer that out of that fund and put it back into our bond fund, because when we initially did that project, we paid it all out of our bond funds. So that'll probably go away by the end of the year. And then Fund 40 capital outlay, about $687,000. Next steps, today the board approves the second interim. We will meet our financial obligations for this year and the next 2 years. Between now and June, we will be doing budget development and LCAP. May 2020, the May revise comes out from the governor, and he kind of recaps what his January proposal was. It changes anything based on revenues that the states received from January to April. And then our first meeting in June is our 2021 LCAP and budget hearing for the board, and then the second meeting is the actual approval of the LCAP and the budget. That's all I have.
Okay, if no one has any questions, then I'm looking for a motion to approve the second interim financial report as presented by Maureen.
So,
Jen? Okay, that's second. All in favor? All right, 11.3, resolution 192007, staff appreciation week. So I'm presenting this for Erin, and rather than celebrating our certificated and classified employees during 2 separate weeks, she is proposing that a resolution to celebrate all district employees during the same week by designating May 4th through 8th as staff appreciation week. So that makes sense. No questions, I'm just looking for an approval. Go ahead. Perfect. Second. Perfect. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. 11.4 agreement with VALIC for 403B TPA. That's Michael.
Yep, it's an agreement to have VALIC AIG manage our 403B plans. 403B regulations and monitoring can become more and more complex. It's important that we have someone else to do this for us, making sure we're compliant. There's no cost to us, no cost to our employees on an ongoing basis. So I think it's makes sense for us to do.
Questions, anybody? No? Okay. All right, so I'm looking for a motion to go ahead and approve the agreement with VALIC.
So moved.
Second.
All right, you guys are on it tonight. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. 11.5 MOU with Napa County Office of Education for the famous escape software. You guys are gonna be really tired hearing about escape. Probably not. So we have to enter into an MOU with Napa County Office of Education because they are kind of the umbrella of all the districts that are going to be using escape. And this is just an MOU providing the circumstances around that agreement. And it looks like we're going to be seeing a cost increase of about $24,000 for the implementation piece of escape. So there's a one-time cost of $24,000 to implement. And then the cost increase for 2021 will be about $16,800. We knew there was going to be a cost increase going into this. All the districts were aware of it. And it just, in order to get a better system, you need to pay more money. So we also, as a district, support a 1.0 FTE at the county level. And so that cost is also in the agreement. It is something we have been paying for through DS. We're just going to continue to pay for it through escape. And it's a percentage basis on the size of the district. But again, the system is far superior to what we're using right now, so the extra cost that it takes to get it implemented and to use it, we will hopefully see a lot of efficiency come out on the other side. We don't. I mean, we don't. You don't ever want to have a different financial system than your county office. You, because that requires a whole other set of study by the state because you're now not fiscally, in with the county. So, Do you think that there's going to be, given the little challenges you've had with scraping the data over, any additional charges that are going to crop up later? There are lots of little pieces that if we decide we want to implement, they are additional charges, but nothing very extensive. And so far, the only additional thing I think we're going to pay for as a district is to have a workflow for our HR through payroll process, which it'll be fantastic. So
It'll help you.
yes, it will help both of us. So, okay, perfect. Great, other questions? No? Okay, looking for a motion to go ahead and approve the MOU. Second? Okay, perfect. And all in favor? All right, and student representatives. Okay. So board policies and administrative regulations. So these are policies, just for the, I'm sorry, I missed one. Oh, sure. Oh, it's a different MOU, that's why. Okay, go ahead, Maureen, 11.6, the MOU for transfer. Oh, it's Mike, it says Maureen. It does? Yeah. Sorry. Whomever would like to tackle it.
Sure. We currently serve our 18 to 22-year-old special education students mostly in Santa Rosa, through the Sonoma County Office of Education. One student is with Santa Lena. It's not ideal for our kids to serve them in Napa County. We want them to be able to take employment in their own community. And our County Office of Education does not provide a program, which sometimes is the case with these programs. We've been in conversations with St. Louis Unified for almost a year about the idea of can we collaborate to create our own program. We know it's going to be better for kids, though it's a big lift. It's taken a lot of talks, a lot of conversation. We are very, very hopeful, and I think we're getting close to potentially being able to propose that. What this MOU does is it authorizes a cost-sharing agreement between us and St. Louis for Nick Joy, who is their speech-language pathologist. He also is getting his PhD in adult transition. This authorizes some work by Nick to lay the groundwork to see if he can create partnerships with local employers lawyers to start to draft a vision and a mission statement. This is one of the kind of important step one to make sure that this could potentially move forward next week.
Questions?
Motion to approve 1.6.
Okay. Perfect. All in favor? Perfect. Student rep absent. Okay, now on to 11.7. So these are board policies that were brought to us for discussion last time, and we updated them to reflect the most current laws, regulations, and district practices. They were brought to a previous meeting for the first reading and now are recommended for adoption. So unless anybody has any questions about those that you read through? No? Okay, perfect. So just looking for a motion to go ahead and approve those board policies.
So
Perfect. Second. All in favor? Okay, and absent student rep. Okay, so closing items, just to go over the calendar. Our next board meeting is April 13th, and we have May 11th and June 8th. And then June 15th. If there's anybody who thinks they can't make one of those, let us know as soon as you can. 12.2 upcoming events and activities. Friday, March 6th was the ending of the second, will be the ending of the second trimester and the minimum day. March 8th through 9th is the WASC visit, and April 6th through 10th is spring break. Tentative future agenda items, ESL redesignation ceremony, and our LCAP update. At this point, we do not need to reconvene to closed session, and so I'm looking for that famous last motion.
12.6? Hold on. For 12.3, I would like to, somewhere in the near future, address the deficiencies in our summer school program.
Okay, so we'll take that to the district office and have them work it into the agendas. Okay, so now
I second, Jeff.
you move and you second it? Okay, all in favor?